We are so privileged to have Dr. Peter McCullough as our special guest speaker this evening. Dr. McCullough is a respected American internist, cardiologist, and epidemiologist who has authored over 700 publications indexed in the National Library of Medicine. He has played a prominent role in national and international discussions throughout the world on the safety and efficacy of COVID-19 vaccines. And he has testified multiple times before the US Senate, the European Parliament, and other government bodies in order to bring attention to critical public health concerns. We're so grateful for Dr. McCullough's expert knowledge as we endeavor in this interview to uncover the truth and ensure accountability in the aftermath of the COVID-19 war against humanity. Due to Dr. McCullough's busy schedule, this interview was pre-recorded, so there will be no Q&A this evening. And now, my friends, I invite you to sit back and get comfortable as we listen to this very important and informative conversation between Tanya Gaw and Dr. Peter McCullough.
Well, thank you, Heather, and welcome, Dr. McCullough. We are so glad to have you back on the show.
Great to join my colleagues from the Great White North. I hope the snow is melted by this time.
In most of the country.
That's good.
I'm not living in an igloo right now, so let's put it that way. We're all good. Anyways, I'm so glad to have you on the show. I know that we're a little pressed for time today, and so we're going to try to cover as much as possible. I know that in the last, I think it's been about a year and a half since we had you on, and there's a lot of different things happening. I hear reports in the news, Slovakia has halted 300,000 mRNA. They're saying detecting DNA contamination. Others are talking about vaccine batches, that they act as engineered bioweapons laced with cancer. There's autopsy data showing the myocarditis and immune system damage. We've got Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is now demanding comprehensive testing, preparing, I believe, for legal action. And of course, FBI Director Kash Patel has taken over Dr. Anthony Fauci's phones and hard drives. So you guys got a lot happening in the US, and you've been at the Senate, you've been doing incredible hearings and really advocating, from the onset of all of this and ringing the alarm bell. So bring us up to date a little bit on how things are going on your end.
Boy, you summarized it. It couldn't get worse for the vaccine program. People don't want to take COVID vaccines. They're not taking them. Our FDA is still in la la land. They published in the New England Journal of Medicine new guidance saying not for kids, not for pregnant women. But they said that, 33% of Americans should be taking shots. Turns out hardly anybody's taking shots, way less than 15%. Great website to follow is called USA Facts, where they take the CDC data and they present it so you can understand it. It turns out for white men like me in the United States, all comers, only half of us were fully vaccinated. Wow. Not nearly as many people took the shots in the States as what they think. 44% of African Americans were fully vaccinated. Right. So the vaccines were not popular. You're right. They've had tremendous problems associated with heart damage, blood clots, neurologic damage, autoimmune problems, and then more and more data on cancer. And you are right on contamination with cancer-causing DNA called SV40. Now there's a new lab in Germany. I want my Canadian colleagues to know it's called INMODIA, I-N-M-O-D-I-A. Look them up. INMODIA. You can send a sample there from Canada. They can see if there's spike protein in the bloodstream and see if messenger RNA and SV40 is inside your cells. Wow. I've done it on some of my severe patients, and sadly, they took the shots in 2021, and they still have it with them in 2025.
Well, okay, and that was going to be one of my questions today, was to ask you, now that we're 4.5 years out from them launching, we'll call it a bioweapon today. I don't know. Calling it a vaccine is pretty loose term at this point. And if we look at it, we're going through experiences here at Action for Canada because one of our closest team members has been diagnosed with a stage 4 pancreatic cancer.
Oh.
it had just come down last Wednesday is basically the official announcement of this. And what we're wondering is he had gone in for kidney stones and gallstones and, surgeries like this. And then there was an error made and they had nicked his bowel. And so there was internal bleeding, which led to an emergency trip to the hospital and a number of blood transfusions. And so I think there's a lot of viewers who are very concerned about this matter, that if you're in a predicament like that, is there reason to be concerned about receiving blood from those who have been vaxxed? And is it possible that that could lead to these rapid cancers that we've been hearing about?
No, I don't think so. The average unit of blood is only on the shelf 42 days. So virtually nobody's taking shots. And the general advice is if you take a shot, whatever you do, donate blood. So I think the current blood supply is not a concern.
Okay, I think that's going to be a relief to a lot of people, because I still know people who are like on their 8th shot. I know of people, they're not within my inner circle anymore because they think I'm a conspiracy theorist. But yeah, there's quite a number of people in Canada who are still behind the shots. And here in BC, Bonnie Henry and the NDP government are still pushing this. I think. So, hi, we're going to have a little quick break in the show because when Dr. McCullough and I were talking on this issue, so I'm live right now, obviously, and the rest of the show is going to be pre-recorded, but I thought that it was important to interject at this time to provide an opportunity to address the comments that were just made regarding blood transfusions. In Canada, unfortunately, we're faced with a different situation than the US because, of course, of their newly elected and appointed leaders that are taking a really hard stand against the vax and in bringing public awareness. So a lot of you, we know that those who are going for boosters and jabs is way down in Canada as well, but there are still a number of people who are taking them. And I felt it was really important. I happened to be talking to Dr. Hoff last night, and I repeated some of Dr. McCullough's comments on the blood transfusions, addressing those in the US, and asked if this also applies in Canada. And Dr. Hoff confirmed that this is not the case, unfortunately, and that Canada Blood Services has and is refusing to acknowledge that vax blood is tainted. And Canadians, I don't know anybody or any source from any news media that's advising Canadians who have been jabbed not to give blood. So the good news is, and as Dr. McCullough and I will, go into the show, you'll hear more of this. So stick around because this is really good news, is that Dr. Hoff has confirmed that the treatment protocol being used, which is nanokinase, bromelain, and curcumin, is effective in reducing the spike proteins. So go to Action for Canada's page under COVID-19. You'll see treatments come up. You'll see the treatment page. And we've actually had that on the website from Dr. McCullough for a number of years. The only difference is that Dr. Hoff also recommends taking ivermectin for a period of time with these three ingredients. And so Dr. Hoff added that we've all been tainted in some way due to shedding. And like Dr. McCullough agreed that it is recommended that everyone, as a precaution, even take this protocol. So I just wanted to give you some encouragement that for years we've been believing that people that were jabbed and these spike proteins entered their body, that there was no way of removing them. And so as we go into the show, Dr. McCullough is going to address this issue. And it was confirmed by Dr. Hoff that they are having very positive outcomes from people treating themselves with this protocol. And this is readily available on Amazon and from health food stores to get these products. So please be sure to share this interview today widely and help inform your friends and loved ones that there are effective treatments that are reportedly helping many people who have been deceived and devastated that they took this like I say, this bioweapon. So let's get the news out there. Help us do that. We're going to return to the rest of the show and just thank you for joining us. And I'm going to count on you to share this interview with many others. All right, here we go. We have the most tyrannical system of governance pretty much in the Western world, other than
Now,
a
wait a
few
minute,
spots.
Tanya, you're such a nice young woman. How can, somebody who took 8 shots, why can't they be friends with you?
They don't want to be friends with me. They think I'm too radical.
Well,
It's not that I won't be friends with them, but they believe that the work I'm doing is a conspiracy.
Well, here's the thing. There's a great video out there, and I'm a star in it. And I give credit to Monica Smith in Australia. And it's called The Rational Theorist, www.rationaltheorist.com. And so they play a video, and someone goes, "Oh, Dr. McCullough's a conspiracy theorist." And so the comeback is, no, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm a rational theorist. I have rational theories. We can talk about them. We should be able to talk about the vaccines. The most common response I get when I talk to somebody who took the shots, and like a colleague or a family member, they say, "I don't want to talk about it."
Mm-hmm. And that's great.
Yeah. Do you get that?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. But the beauty is that time is a treasure, because within time, people are realizing many, don't you find? I mean, it's one of the questions I had for you. I mean, you would be like me, that would have been one of those people on the front line trying to warn people not to capitulate or comply with all of the lockdown measures, but also to avoid taking this injection. And do you find that over time you are having far more support than those who were once upon a time opposing you?
Yeah, it's slow, and it's slowly growing. Public figures are coming out, and there's no one out there saying, "Wow, I'm really glad I took a shot."
Mm-hmm.
People nowadays are saying, "Boy, I guess I was lucky. I dodged a bullet." Or they say, "Thank goodness I did spike detoxification. I followed your protocol for the vaccinated to get out of this predicament."
Okay, and that's I want to go right into that you're talking about something that, again, a lot of our viewers need this information. We have a COVID-19 page if individuals go onto Action for Canada as well, but be sure to go onto Dr. McCullough's site. We're going to have all the links available in the description. And we want to know about protocols. Can the actual spike proteins be, removed from the system? How describe that for us in sort of layman's terms?
If you type in McCullough protocol, this is for the base spike detoxification, there's 6.5 million Google hits. I mean, the whole world is doing this. I was the first to publish it in the Journal of the American Physicians and Surgeons, and then in the Springer Nature Journal Curious. The FLCC, now the Independent Medical Association, they've adopted this approach. Everybody should seek out nattokinase, which is a natural supplement. You can get it on Google. You can get it on Amazon Canada. Nattokinase, bromelain, another oral supplement derived from the stems of pineapple, and curcumin, and use them in combination. Now, you can't get the Wellness Company products on Amazon Canada. I'm a little unclear if you can get them from Wellness Company at all, but you certainly can get the individual components on Amazon.ca. I did it myself the other night. So nattokinase, bromelain, and curcumin, and then follow the McCullough protocol. You'll find it all over the internet. It's the most widely used approach. Most people need this at least for a year. And then if well tolerated, I'd continue it indefinitely, because we don't know if people are transmitting the spike protein by shedding. They probably freshly vaccinated people are. You certainly can get COVID again. And I encourage everybody, McCullough protocol, base spike protein detoxification. For your Americans listening, you can go to the Wellness Company, twc.health, get the ultimate spike detox, and follow the instructions.
Okay, and we'll for sure be making sure that information is available. We also have it on Action for Canada's page, many articles and links leading to Dr. McCullough. There you go. And can you describe, because, when this shot came out and they talked about the spike proteins, and you saw these little images, it's almost like that they're going to attach to your cells. And so how do these, there you go.
There it is.
There's the image I'm referring to.
There's the spike protein, the spine on the virus. I showed this little guy in the U.S. Senate. Nobody had actually looked at a spike protein in the U.S. Senate. So it turns out when you had the infection, Tanya, or you took the vaccine, the spike protein gets loaded in the body and the human body can't get rid of it. That's the reason why you need to take the supplements probably for a year to help your body clear it out.
Okay, so this is extremely good news because at first we were hearing once you've taken this shot and the spike proteins had multiplied in the way that they were traveling through the body to the brain and other major organs, that it was very difficult, if impossible, to reverse this effect. And so what you're confirming and telling us today is that you are having success using your protocols. And so that is very exciting news, and we're going to be sure to be promoting this. So you had talked about a D-dimer test, and that was in Modic?
No, the InModia lab.
Modia?
The InModia lab not only does D-dimer, but they measure spike protein itself in the bloodstream, and they measure the messenger RNA and the SV40 contaminants. So this is high tech. Everybody's got to check it out. Go on the internet and find InModia Laboratory. The Canadians can contact them, and you can send a sample to them. It's very important. I've had my patients do it as well. InModia, and get the full panel of testing. Now, if the D-dimer, which is a common test, if it's elevated, it's a sign that the spike protein is contributing to micro blood clots or even real blood clots, bigger blood clots in the body.
Are you hearing much about blood clotting? Because that was something that was sort of at the forefront of the news anyways. Within the freedom movement, you wouldn't find mainstream media talking about this. And then I saw it sort of escalate and move towards the myocarditis and athletes and newscasters and individuals collapsing from the jab, and as well as the rapid cancers. So is the blood clotting still an issue for those who are choosing to take these extra shots, the boosters?
For sure. And you know what, Tanya? The blood clots are probably an equal risk between the infection and taking more shots. So if you've had the infection and you didn't take the shots, you're still at risk for blood clots. And I'm seeing that in my practice. So that's the reason why don't get too confident. If you just had COVID and you skipped the shots, listen, I didn't take the shots. They weren't safe, but I got COVID 3 times. I'm doing the detox, nattokinase, bromelain, and curcumin. It's a healthy combination anyway, helps prevent heart disease and stroke, but I'm definitely afraid of getting a blood clot. I travel on planes and what have you. Let's not get burned. Everybody should get McCullough protocol-based spike protein detoxification.
Okay, yes. Okay, so now you were recently at the Senate, and I shared that meeting with our mass email list, and we're hoping that many people are going to see it. It had highlights. And in there, I remember you talking about the myocarditis and the rapid cancers, and as well, let our viewers know one of the other results of consequences of taking the jab towards pregnant women. And I understand it was something like was it an 82% miscarriage rate? Is that correct?
Yeah, Dr. James Thorpe presented the data. Now there's multiple studies. Taking the shot during pregnancy is a disaster. Finally in the US, they stopped recommending it for pregnant women, but what a disaster. It led to miscarriages in the first trimester, stillbirths in the second trimester, and then sadly premature delivery, both fetal and maternal hemorrhage in the third trimester. It was an absolute disaster. And now our National Center for Health Statistics and CDC has published, you're going to be astonished to hear this, Tanya. 2021, there was record maternal mortality in the United States. American young mothers dying after they delivered their baby. And if you go to Focal Point's Substack, search a maternal mortality, you'll see my Substack on this. This is astonishing. And they define early death. It was 42 days after delivering the baby, and then out to a year. That's considered a late maternal death. You're going to be stunned to learn this. I just couldn't believe this. Do you know 10% of the late maternal deaths in young women delivering babies was due to cancer?
Oh my.
Since when does a young woman who delivers a baby die of cancer within a year?
I hadn't heard that report yet. And, my heart is already so heavy hearing about all the miscarriages, which I've called forced abortions. What a way to control the population. But my son and my daughter-in-law, I became a grandmother February of last year. And within her community of friends, there was something like 5 or 6 individuals that had ladies that had had miscarriages, 5 or 6 within just that group who were unaware of the harms of taking, again, I'm going to call it this bioweapon. And so what do you see? I mean, it's very encouraging to hear that the United States is not supporting the jab for pregnant women and for children. I understand have they removed the request for youth to take the jab as well?
Well, yeah, they pulled them off the schedule and, said it no longer recommended. But think about this. If they're not safe for pregnant women and children now, they weren't safe 3 years ago.
No.
I mean, this is a tacit admission that this has been a biological safety catastrophe. It's been an absolute catastrophe. And not a single world leader and not a single country has pulled them off the market. Not a single one.
No, in British Columbia, the health officer, Bonnie Henry, and the NDP government are still pushing it, saying it's safe and effective for pregnant women and for children, school-age children. And we know that the vaccine or immunization schedule was 14 or 16 doses back in 1950, and it's just kept increasing to 72 doses for children in 2019, and they figure it's going to be up over 100 doses because they are going to include COVID jabs as a protocol for children in their lifetime, 0 to 18 years old. This is what our children are looking forward to. So I love that you talked about vaccine hesitancy among adults, but what I'm finding as well is, let's bring up childhood vaccination or immunization, whatever you prefer to call it. But now there is a huge increase in hesitancy amongst young parents deciding not to give their children immunization. Have you seen that as well, or how do you feel about that?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I just gave a stage presentation out in Temecula, California, 412 church out there. Tim Thompson's the pastor. And this nice couple, a little older than me, came up and said, Dr. McCullough, we didn't take the shots, and we've got lots of kids, and we got 25 grandkids. I said, well, congratulations. God bless you. They said 4 of them have autism.
Yeah.
Since when do you hear 25 grandkids and 4 kids with autism? When you and I were kids, the rate of autism was 1 in 10,000. Now it's 1 in 31 in the United States. That means, that's 2022 statistics. That means 3.2% of American children have autism, like real autism. Some states is even higher. Heavily vaccinated California. California is kind of like Canada, where they make it nearly impossible to attend school unless you take a shot. Yeah. California is up to 5% of kids with autism, and among them, 27% have profound autism. Mm-hmm. Profound autism is defined as an IQ less than 55, head-banging, repetitive behaviors, nonverbal, unable to use the bathroom alone. They will require lifelong special needs. Can you imagine more than 1% of California children are in that situation right now and growing?
Well, if we're going to talk about a pandemic, I think that would be more appropriate if we talk about what's happening to our children as far as autoimmune disorders and autism. My daughter-in-law is an education assistant, and so she's dealing with this on a daily basis, and how the increase within the schools and behavioral problems. I mean, for multiple reasons, we're having behavioral problems because the woke agenda is in there as well. But these autistic children, and we can't even just talk about that percentage of children that have autism. We need to also reflect on the families. I mean, how this has impacted their lives, and that will be forever.
Tanya, it's absolutely devastating for young parents. They are terrified now of having children. Think about this. This is U.S. statistics from the CDC. 11% of kids have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. That's a separate category. 3.2% have autism spectrum disorder. That's already now 15% of the population. Mm-hmm. Now there's, easily 7% of children have an allergic disease like asthma, allergic dermatitis, atopic dermatitis. And now we're up to 20% of kids, not just overweight, but with obesity. Mm-hmm. Now, so we're talking half the children have a medical problem. And you know what when they get around puberty, you know what they face, especially the kids with autism, they actually face a transgender crisis.
Yes.
So it turns out the majority of transgender people have autism. And so their dating is hard, they have psychological problems, and now they're seduced to change their genders.
Mm-hmm. Well, they are definitely targeting the most vulnerable in our society. And on top of that, between Europe, America, and Canada, never mind the fentanyl crisis as well, but the attack against the natural family, but targeting our children, trying to march out little Marxist soldiers from the school system. But part of that is affecting children. So we've got the autism group. We have the other learning, I want to call them disabilities at this point, mm-hmm. that kids are facing within the school system. And then you have them indoctrinating our children, where we've got a 25 or 29% rate of children who are now identifying as LGBTQ because, they've been fed that it's that high. And they call...
No, say that again. I'm shocked. What's the number?
29%. Could be 25 to 29%, and it even goes into 30%, depending. Well, it would depend on what state you live in or what province. And this is a crisis. And to have children going through this en masse. Actually, we're leading into children here. So just one more thing, because I believe I've heard you.
Hang on, I have to give an update on transgender.
Yes.
Recently, the Supreme Court upheld a statewide ban by Tennessee. No transgender programs for children in Tennessee. Texas, there's no programs. Half the states, transgender is so dangerous. I want the Canadian parents to know this is so dangerous. It's sterilizing, disfiguring, increases their psychiatric problems, and increases mortality. It's so dangerous, it's banned. President Trump has pulled funding for all of this. There's a reason why we're banned in the United States, you guys. It's not good medicine. It's actually leading to great harm. So, we're at a time of great controversy here. This is not going well. And we are going to have to, intervene. We've got to, RFK has dismissed the entire vaccine panel. We need a whole new group in there. We have to lessen the burden of vaccines. Now, I'm not against vaccines. I've taken all the vaccines up to the COVID shots, but, we can't give big batteries of vaccines during the vulnerable neurologic development phase of life. Vaccines are far safer if they're given individually, if they're spaced out and taken later in life, and a lesser number of them.
Well, and actually, when the so-called vaccines were introduced back in the 50s, there was so much within society that had already improved that many of the diseases that these were meant to, counter had already dropped in their intensity and their degree to almost nil. And so the introduction has led to big pharma, no liability on behalf of those producing these jabs. And so really it's become a toxic product that they're using on our children, and all for the purpose of money. And as well, so is the trans agenda, because once you diagnose a child, they can self-diagnose as trans at this point. You get them on puberty blockers, you're sterilizing them and then fast-tracking them to surgeries and mutilating their bodies, and it's not considered illegal. It's just shocking.
But Tanya, I want another important message. One shot of a puberty blocker, the most common one used is Lupron, it impairs intellectual development. The kids will never be as smart as they could be.
Mm-hmm.
One shot is very important. But let me ask you a question. You're a young mother, maybe maybe a young grandmother. If you were a young woman today starting your family, would you have your kids take routine childhood vaccines?
No. No, 100% no. I regret that I did with my kids. Like I didn't go for any extras, but I was trusting my doctor. That's 31 years ago when I had my children. And so when I look at it now, I can 100%. And my grandson is living proof. Like he is so intelligent. He's so sharp, just so smart. And yeah, I think it's the
Well, wait a minute.
decision.
Did your grandson take any shots?
No.
Oh, well, listen, my kids also about 30 years ago, and they took fewer shots, but like you, I didn't question it. As a young parent today, if I was the father and I had a healthy child born,
Mm-hmm.
I would defer on all the vaccines. I'd follow the guidance from the World Council for Health, which is a physician-led, evidence-based, consensus-driven organization, which says it's safer to defer on the vaccines. Safer. So a lot of parents are doing that. You know how many families in the United States now are doing that, deferring on all the vaccines? You'll be amazed. It's nearly 10%.
That's exciting to know because, it's like playing Russian roulette with your kids. Which one is going to get, the injection that's going to affect them and have a diagnosis of autism or an autoimmune disorder, and it's just not worth it. And what is the community of people because they want to do. They've never permitted research on the unvaxxed children compared to vaxxed. And there's the Amish who have refused to vax their kids, and they don't have ADHD, they don't have autism or these other conditions. So there is proof, but we just need to get that proof before the public.
Right. So a lot of parents don't want to take the risk. And like I say, I think a healthy child, for sure, to defer. A lot of vaccines are just not appropriately timed. So for instance, a healthy child, a healthy mother, it's inappropriate to give the hepatitis B vaccine. Now, if they grow up to be a cardiologist like me and they're going to do heart catheterizations or a surgeon, they should get it, when they're adults. If you can imagine some other circumstances where, where one could benefit from a vaccine. But you're right, the majority of illnesses are legacy diseases, and we treat it with antibiotics anyway. Like I never test for diphtheria or pertussis because we treat it with a Z-Pak anyway, azithromycin. We wouldn't test for it. Influenza, we've got, we have Zofluza. It's a great drug for influenza. So we don't need a flu shot. You can go through all of them. So the vaccines are not medically necessary. They're not clinically indicated, and they appear to be unsafe and given in combinations. Now, what I've said is vaccines are not the direct cause of autism, but they're a risk factor for autism. This is very important. There's other risk factors, and there's secular trends. The risk factors include having a premature delivery before 37 weeks, older parents, man over 40, woman over 35. Okay, there are some genetic variants, and then combination vaccines. So there's a risk factor. Now, of all those things, one of the most modifiable risk factors is to defer on the vaccines. So you're right. All the studies that we have available that compared completely unvaccinated kids to vaccinated kids, the unvaccinated kids are always healthier.
Hands down. And I even wonder, we talked about when we were young and maybe autism was 1 in 10,000 and now it's 1 in 31, but what has increased during that time? So when I was a kid, of course, the vaccine had already been introduced for some time. And we've heard, at the World Health Organization leaked videos where they were confirming that the mercury and the metals that are in the immunizations travel. Some of that can travel to the brain. I'm not a medical doctor, but I'm trying to articulate myself in ways where the mercuries have been part of the cause of autism. Is that correct information?
No, Tanya, I think people have inappropriately focused on adjuvants like mercury or aluminum.
Yes.
I think it's a bit distracting. Well, what we know is when vaccines are given in combination, it's the vaccine itself, and these adjuvants, they raise inflammatory factors called cytokines. They go into the brain, and the cytokines cause damage in the brain. They can cause a febrile seizure. They can cause sudden infant death syndrome or the development of autism. So
okay,
it's
that
not
makes sense.
it's not little single, it's actually the combination. For instance, the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine combination, that was the first one that was linked to autism by the seminal publication by Andrew Wakefield in Lancet in 1998. Do you know MMR is so dangerous that in Japan it's outlawed? You can't even give those three together. So the Japanese know it's dangerous to give the MMR vaccine. Why are we giving it in the United States or Canada if the Japanese know it's dangerous and is outlawed in Japan for that reason?
Well, and thank you for explaining that, because that does make perfect sense to me. And this is, again, a compelling reason why parents need to really consider and think about what it is they're going to do. I know I was so afraid to say no when this doctor I trusted was saying, oh, no, it's safe and effective and recommended. And the what if is so scary for a parent. But now we're reversing, we're turning those tables around, and we're saying the what if is far greater on how your child will go through life after taking the so-called childhood immunizations that will last a lifetime. Do you know of any treatments as well? Because you and I both have mutual friends in Ted Kuntz from Vaccine Choice Canada, and he was affected for a lifetime with his son after taking one of the vaccines. His son, just lived a very complicated life, had many, many seizures daily. And it was just so sad to hear Ted's testimony. And then, of course, Rocco Galati, our lawyer, he had twin boys. And when they, I think, were age 6, they also had a vaccine. They spoke like 5 different languages they were teaching them. And one of them ended up having a terrible vaccine injury. And so they've been trying treatments. And I'm just praying that something is, going to be created or found that can help the many, many parents that are dealing with this and with autism specifically.
Right. This will have to be my last comment. I'm going to have to go. But let me say, sadly, autism has very little research being done, despite it being the epidemic of all time in children. There are no approved therapies for it. There's very few drugs or strategies even being tested. And it's a lifelong problem. I mean, one of my most difficult patients I had today is a young man with severe autism. I talked to the father and the patient today. The father said they worked night and day to try to get him. He was nonverbal, severe autism. They got him incredibly functional. He was able to go to college. He's a college senior. He's very, very smart. But you know what? Sadly, tonight, he's an inpatient on a psychiatric ward. Because he's overwhelmed with anxiety and other problems. He also has COVID vaccine injury syndrome. I mean, autism is a lifelong problem. And instead of trying to find the risk factors and find treatment, what our CDC is advising is just accepting it. It's called neurodiversity. And, recently there was a paper in either New England Journal of Medicine or JAMA across my desk, where doctors were advocating for neurodiversity in medical schools. So they're actually advocating to have autistic medical students become doctors. And they say, well, they have more special needs and it's going to take longer, and as opposed to solving the problem to begin with. So people have said, listen, just accept us. We have autism, or we are transgender, what have you. We have neurodiversity, as opposed to recognition of a problem. It's called normalization. Well, listen, I'm Dr. Peter McCullough. Thank you so much for having me. Love you guys in Canada. Really wish we could do more down here in the United States. Something very terrible is going on in the world. It's far beyond world leaders. It's far beyond pharmaceutical companies. Something has happened to humanity. And I think for the rest of our lives now, our mission is to figure out what it is and what we need to do to help ourselves and help others, our family, our loved ones, and our countries get through this. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, Dr. McCullough. Thank you for spending this time with us.